last week, we learned professional ethics and accountability. And you told us that code of conduct ethics is very important for us to succeed in the profession. As long as social work is concerned, that we should make sure we practice in code and conduct.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? We appreciate that from, I think that's from Chinyere, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other contribution? All right, without wasting much time, let's see how we can get into the business of the day. Last week, we agreed we're going to start from social workers' accountability. I want to believe I can be heard properly.
Very well, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Yes,
so
sir.
we agreed to start from social workers' accountability. We work with our clients. We find ourselves in an organization, a professional setting, having a professional relationship with our clients, our colleague, the organization, and even the profession itself. So in every step and level of this relationship, of our relationship with our clients, we have to be accountable. So social workers are expected to be accountable to their clients, to their colleagues, to their employers, to the profession, that is the professional association, the institutions, and to the law. So you see, when we talk about accountability in social work, it's not just to your clients. You should also remember that you have a responsibility to be accountable to your colleague. You have a responsibility to be accountable to the profession. You have a responsibility too to be accountable to the law. So social workers are accountable for their actions to the values and principles of the profession. That is why we took time to explain to us the values. You must practice within the values. And the vehicle that can help you achieve this is when you practice and observe the code of conduct, the ethics of the profession, the principles. So doing this will help you as social workers in equity to be reliable in practice, to be honest, to be trustworthy. And this is so because we are answerable to our clients during engagements. We're also answerable to the professional bodies, like the Chartered Institute of Social Work or the National Association of Social Workers, NASO, the Association of Medical Social Workers, SWPCE, Association of Social Work Educators of Nigeria, SWPCE, and lots more. There are a lot of social work professional bodies that you might be affiliated or associated with. So whatever or wherever you find yourself, you want to know that you have the responsibility to be accountable not just to your clients, but to the professional bodies you belong to, as well as the profession of social work, and even to the law promulgated and enforced by the appropriate agencies and government institutions here in Nigeria. So the bottom line is social work, or for social workers to be successful in practice, you must be able to observe the ethics, the code of ethics, the values. This will put you in a position to be answerable to your clients, the profession, as well as to other professional bodies and the law, which will make your practice to be reliable, to make you to be trustworthy. And that is when you can rightly say, yes, I am a social worker. So we have a responsibility to our colleagues. You have responsibility to your clients. You have responsibility to your professional practice. You have responsibility to as professionals. You also have responsibilities to social work profession and responsibilities of the social work institutions. So all these ethical responsibilities must be observed in our engagements. Now let's take time to use examples to help us understand how this works. For example number one, social workers' ethical responsibilities to the clients. Now, the relationship between you as a social worker with your clients is referred to as a professional relationship. Now, I keep telling my students that your client came for you for a reason. And you must relate with your client just for that reason why he or she came to you. Anything outside that professional relationship is a dual relationship. And it is not part of your responsibility. In fact, engaging in a dual relationship with your client will be exposing you to malpractice suits that won't be healthy for practice. Will be exposing you to dangers and lots more. So you have a responsibility to your colleagues or to your clients rather, to render services to those clients, to that client, in a way that will not hinder his or her, or will not, will I say, will not take for granted his or her rights. You will not deprive the client of his or her autonomy or right of self-determination. Will not practice in a way that would take for granted his or her privacy and lots more. Those are the responsibilities you have for your clients. Now, ethical responsibilities for your colleagues or to your colleagues. You see, in social work practice, we are not immune to the problems our clients face. In fact, by virtue of the principle of empathy, oftentimes we see ourselves connecting with our client's experience to the point of we feeling the same pains our clients are feeling. So while working with your clients, you're expected to engage in what we refer to as self-care and reflective practice, where you from time to time try to, in a way or in a sense, detoxify your system, your body, from those experiences of your clients, so as not to let these things affect you in a way. And one way you can succeed in doing this is to engage your colleagues. So your colleagues also have responsibility to look after you, same way you have a responsibility to look after your colleague. For example, you're working in an agency and you notice that your colleague is becoming too close to a particular client of an opposite sex. You have a responsibility to call back the attention of your clients, or your colleague rather. Please, don't you think you're becoming too close? And you as a social worker who understands this ethical responsibility to colleague will not want to take such advice too personal. You want to understand that, okay, fine, your client is saying this from the angle of concern as part of his or her responsibility to his or her colleague. Another example could be not practicing in a way that will expose your colleague to harm or to dangers. Sometimes in some organizations, people deliberately do things just to expose others to dangers, probably just to take over their position or whatever, or make it look like they are far better than their colleagues. That should not be said among social workers, right? So you practice in a way that will do less harm. And if your colleague should expose the privacy of his or her clients to you, is for you, that information is not for your personal consumption. That information is for you to contribute your quota in assisting your colleague to resolve the disequilibrium of that client. So the principle of confidentiality does not extend to the point of you not sharing your client's experience with your colleague. Yes, because that principle of confidentiality that binds you as the primary social worker to that client also binds your colleagues too. So if you should expose that information to your colleagues, it's not bad, because your colleague is a professional and is expected to keep that information or handle it in a confidential manner, the way it should be. So your colleague should not say, after all, I'm not a social worker. Even if this problem should cast, I won't be responsible. That's wrong. If we should trace it and we notice that, yes, this information happens to leak from your angle, then you'll be held responsible. So in the bottom line is, your responsibility to your colleague, or your ethical responsibility to your colleague, is to watch your colleague's back, same way your colleague is expected to watch your back, and to practice in a way that you can easily collaborate with your colleagues. The third one is ethical responsibilities to the professional practice. Yes, we took time to explain to us the ethics that governs the profession. So as a social worker, you're under obligation to follow and practice within the expanded boundaries of this ethical code of practice. That is the responsibility you have. An example is for you to uphold the integrity of the profession, to practice in a way that would uphold the integrity of the profession. Now, ethical responsibilities as professionals. You see, social workers do not just work with clients alone. Oftentimes, based on our experience and our expertise, we identify other professionals that can be of help to our clients, and we try to bring them on board to render services to a particular client. So while we have a particular client, we might have multiple professionals revolving around that client, rendering services to that client. And the social worker is the one, or will be the one, managing and working collaboratively with these clients or these professionals. So you have these ethical responsibilities to these professionals. You have the responsibility to respect and work with them collaboratively. We see what is happening in medical field. For example, if you go to the hospitals, the doctors will always feel like, okay, fine, they are better. Without them, patients cannot survive. The nurses will feel that, okay, fine, without them, patients cannot survive. The lab attendants will feel they are more important. No, we don't place emphasis. We rather believe that everybody is a stakeholder as far as the client's problem is concerned, and everybody is important. So we practice in a way whereby even if a cleaner is involved, we do not look down on those cleaner. We consider that cleaner as a professional as far as that client's issue or problem is concerned. So that's the ethical responsibilities you have as professionals. So while you're the one managing all other professionals revolving around your clients, you see how you collaborate, or you see how you communicate and assign responsibilities in a way that will not be condescending or disrespectful to others, making it look like Mohammed, kindly mute your mic. Thank you. All right, so that's what we have as an example of our ethical responsibilities as professionals. Now, ethical responsibilities to the social work profession. Yes, as a profession, you must practice in a way, you have a responsibility to practice in a way that befits the profession. For you to be called or referred to as a social worker, you must uphold a conduct that is expected of social workers. So being a social worker is not just passive, it is active. You must continue every day to demonstrate by your action and practice that you're qualified to be referred to as a social worker. And the 6 ethical responsibilities is responsibilities to the social work institution. So you're working with an organization, you're working with a particular institution. They have their mandates. Something happened some time ago. A medical doctor was relieved of his duty because it was noticed that whenever clients or patients come to the hospital, especially patients that are rich, what he does is he would tactfully refer the patients to his friend's clinic or hospital, where he will now attend to that patient as his own private client and then take the money. So while working with a particular institution and they are paying him, but he's still looking for short corners to make more money by diverting patients from that hospital to another one. This is an unethical practice. So a social worker who is caught in the web of such practice will definitely not go unpunished. So you're working with an institution with their mandate. Please, you're expected to practice within the expanded boundaries of the mandate of that institution. Yeah, it is will I say sad to say that sometimes in Nigeria, because the social work profession is not really recognized, it's still growing. Practicing within the mandate of your institution tends to limit social work practice. But until we get there, you have these ethical responsibilities to practice within the mandate of your institution. Let's give ourselves, let's share this example to help us or to help buttress the point. You see, if you go to hospitals today, most of the hospitals where you find social workers, the main responsibilities of social workers in Nigerian hospitals is just to look for funds for indigent patients. Not because that's our responsibilities, but that's what we've been relegated to. Because it is believed that social workers can help us get money from patients or help talk to philanthropists to pay bills for patients who cannot pay. And this rule became, will I say, needed, or the role of social workers in these facilities was, will I say, pronounced when the bill that has to do with, or that has to force healthcare institutions to render services to people before asking for money, especially when it has to do with emergency, came up. So people were no longer, or hospitals are no longer expected to ask clients for money before treatment. So to avoid the law coming after you, they said, okay, fine, let's employ social workers to help us do the work, to help us get our monies back. So directly or indirectly, such thoughts or perception happens to shape social workers' responsibilities in healthcare institutions. But then, if you go deep into it, you understand that our responsibility in healthcare institutions goes far beyond that. And that is why we need to engage in constant advocacy and educating our public to help us understand the fact that we are major stakeholders when it comes to rendering services to clients in the healthcare settings. So we'll now be looking at those principles of practice, or those ethical responsibilities we have to our clients. One of the responsibilities we'll be looking at, as far as our client is concerned, is commitment to our clients. Earlier on, when we were talking about social workers' ethical responsibilities to clients, or social workers' core values, one of the things we talked about was services. As social workers, one of our core values of the profession is to render service. And there is no way you can render service to your client without being committed to that client. So if you have a client, it is like a project has been assigned to you, and you must deliver on your project. Like politicians will always say, you deliver your bullying unit. So one of the responsibilities you have is to ensure that you are committed to your clients. How can you be committed to your clients? You have an appointment with your client at 9 a.m. Make sure you're there on or before 9 a.m. Your client should not get there before you. If not, your client's reliance on you will diminish. Another responsibility is informed consent. Informed consent. Do not assume. In fact, assumptions in social work can only be allowed when you're doing research. And of course, as you know, in research, when you make assumptions, it's subjected to test. But while working with clients, do not assume that, okay, fine, since he's a Christian, he will be comfortable with this. Or since he's a Muslim, I don't think he will be comfortable with this. Please talk to your clients and ask your clients, this thing you're saying, or this thing we are about to do, I hope you're comfortable with it. And please, in practice, in reality, you ask a client for consent, especially on weighty matters, and the client said yes, it's not enough. The consent has to be written. There must be evidence that, yes, the client consented to this. So that tomorrow you will not be saying that, but I asked you and you say yes now. And the client will now tell you when The truth of it is sometimes because of the problems our clients are going through, sometimes they will be telling you yes where they mean no. And later when they are settled, they'll begin to use it against you. So you want to be careful not to be roped in. I've seen a situation where a social worker actually had a good intention to assist a particular client. But later when the client was, will I say, in a better condition, the client now turned against the social worker to say, I never asked you to do this in the first place. So please, make sure you obtain a written consent or possibly a voice note to back up or to serve as evidence that, okay, fine, my client consented to this. Another responsibility is, before we proceed to the next responsibility, please, you see, this issue of consent is not just to the client. It also applies to your colleague and even the institution. There are sometimes we find ourselves in agencies where we are asked to do things against the social work ethics. But because your hands are tied and you're expected to follow the dictates of the institution, you must please, to save your head, you must please get a written consent from your boss. And let's tell ourselves the truth. Sometimes our boss can be very dicey, can be very cunning. They know these things they are asking you to do is actually out of place. They wouldn't want to give you an unofficial order or maybe a written document to back up that, how is it called? That instruction. They'll just tell you, hey, John, I asked you to do this. But then you'll be asking for a written consent to serve as evidence. But he will be playing a smart one so that when they come for audit, he will have his way out and you will now be the culprit. So in such situations, I advise my students or social workers to be smart enough. There are so many ways you can get consent from your boss who is trying to avoid giving you an official consent. For example, your boss asks you to do something, and you know this thing is going to rope you later in the future. You can do a mail to your boss. Sir, please, this thing you asked me to do, specify this thing you asked me to do. Okay, you asked me to do this, that. When exactly do you want me to submit it? How many pages? How do you want me to do it? Now, you're trying to bring your boss out by replying to that email or that chat. He or she is giving you a consent, and that is a document you can keep for your protection. So I'm just trying to give us a hint on how to be to come out of a situation where our boss is trying to play a smart one, right? So this issue of consent doesn't just stop at our professional relationship with our client. It also applies to our professional colleagues and even in the institutions. Now, another responsibility is confidentiality and privacy. Under no circumstances or any circumstances are you allowed to expose your client's confidential information to you. Please avoid that temptation. In fact, I used to tell people that if you're working with a client, let's say you're a female social worker, and you have this client that is a woman, and she's, for example, with this is not to, will I say, demean those or look down on those who are positive, but this is for the sake of example, right? Now you have a client, a female client that is HIV positive. And you know, not like HIV, but HIV is extremely bad, but because of the, will I say, how is it called, the stigma attached to HIV, the society frowns at it, right? Now, you have this client, and you notice that where you used to go and make your hair every weekend, that's where your clients goes to make their hair. Please, as a social worker, no matter how good that person is at making your hair, stop going there. Now, the reason is this. Hairdressing salons or female hairdressing salons are places known for gossips. You never can tell how that information as to your client's HIV status would get to the ears of one or two persons tomorrow. And your client will just conclude that, yes, it's because you go there to sit down and gossip her with other customers. So it's better you avoid, and in fact, it's even a way of you avoiding dual relationship. Like we said earlier, remember I used to say this, that your client is not your friend. Your client is not your customer. Your client is your client. So you have the responsibility of keeping safe whatever information your client tells you, and avoid situations that would even make your client suspect that you would even do that in the first place. Another responsibility we have is record keeping. Social workers are good in keeping records. So you have to maintain good records. Now, the importance of maintaining the good records can never be overemphasized. Apart from helping you in the future to explain how you arrive at a particular decision with a client, it will also help you, or it will also help the client when you're no longer in a position to render service to the client. God forbid, nothing is promised. The fact that you're a social worker to a particular client does not mean you live until that engagement when it gets to termination. Tomorrow you might go home maybe, and tomorrow it becomes difficult for you to come to work, or probably you're transferred to another agency, or you get a better offer, you're leaving the country and rest, right? What happens? Another social worker is expected to take over from you, from where you stopped. And the only way the social worker can adequately start from where you stop is to go through the records you left behind. So you're expected to maintain clean, good records. The one that will not make your other colleagues to start looking for you, calling, where is Chamberlain? Where is Adesina? Where is Adebayo? Where is, you know, whether you're there or not, the record speaks for itself. And like we said earlier, record keeping can also help you to document your informed consent. You know, one thing about social work is scientific, it's science. In fact, that differentiates us from philanthropists, because by nature, that is why we are human beings. Naturally, we have this capacity to feel the pains of others. And if we have the ability, or like I say, we are in a position, we tend to help others. That is being human. Naturally, we have that feelings. But then, what differentiates us from those kind of practice is the scientific way of rendering those services, the institutionalized way of rendering those services, a professional way of rendering those services, so that it would make impacts, so that it will address issues from the root. So maintaining records can also help you to document informed consent, so that tomorrow, if your client is trying to suspect you or maybe accuse you of wrongdoing, or you're being exposed to malpractice suit, or someone is trying to say, okay, fine, in the process of my engagement with this social worker, he did this, he did that. In fact, my social worker deceived me. The record will speak for itself. That no, at this point in time, at some point, the client gave the social worker the consent to do this. The client consented to this. And that's why the social worker allowed the client. After all, in practice, there's a principle of non-judgmental attitude, client self-determination. So once the client makes a decision, the social worker is expected to allow the client to make his or her decision and settle for his or her choices. So relating with your client without proper records would expose you to malpractice, would expose you to litigations that would jeopardize your reputation and even keep you out of practice. You see, if you said you engage client A from beginning to end, using a particular method, using a particular theory, using a particular model and perspective, it is believed that if Mr. B or social worker B comes to adopt the same methods with that same client, he or she should get the same results. So if in your record you said, okay, you adopted this, you adopted that, and you got this result, and another social worker is following that same process and is getting a different result entirely, then there is a question in practice which you will be called to answer. So the importance of keeping and maintaining good records can never be overemphasized. Another responsibility is physical contact and sexual relations. This goes beyond our professional relationship with our clients. Your colleagues too. Some of us, small power, where they go put us our hand, we won't begin to chop everything where we see. It is wrong. It is wrong. It will also put you in serious dangers, especially with all due respect to the men, especially to men. The point is, our clients comes to us with a shattered sense of self-worth. And oftentimes, they are not happy, and their emotions are so high to the point that it beclouds their sense of judgment. At that point, they cannot make good decisions and settle for the right choices. So they can easily be manipulated or taken advantage of. And the worst that can happen to a client is to be taken advantage of by his or her social worker. Granted, a client is having issues with his or her husband or his wife. And because of that issues, when it comes to sexual relations, he has never really enjoyed herself for a very long time. And she likes the way you talk to her. She feels or she wishes her husband could talk to her like you. And before you know it, because of her emotions, she's beginning to give you some green lights, and you're falling for it. Tomorrow, you see that action would be used against you. The truth of it is, some clients can be very manipulative, and that is why these principles are there. Last week, I made mention of something. These principles are not there just to protect the client, though. They are there to also protect the social worker. from the client, because the client can also take advantage of us. And that is why, as a principal, you're expected to avoid engaging, or maybe, will I say, allowing your emotions to take a toll of you, on you. Because by the time you allow emotions to cloud your judgment in your professional relationship with the client, it will affect you. You begin to do things outside the expanded boundaries of the ethics that governs, or that is supposed to guide your practice. So avoid physical contact. In fact, your clients should not have your address. Your clients should not have your personal phone numbers. Fine. While you ensure or put modalities in place for the clients to receive services 24/7, you should not be in a position to render services to that particular client 24/7. There should be other social workers on shifts to address that client issue. There should be a number where that social worker can call, and someone to always take that call whenever the need arises. Because by the time you give your client your personal social contact, the client might want to call, maybe in the middle of the night, the client might be depressed and want to call, feel like talking to his or her social worker, and want to call you. Apart from exposing you to dangers with your client, it can also affect your own personal relationship. Imagine your female client calling you at 1 a.m. and you're with your wife. Won't your wife ask questions? Won't she feel uncomfortable? Of course, you must be in the right frame of mind to be able to render services to your clients. So your house cannot be on fire and you think it's still possible for you to assist your clients. Going forward, interruption of services. Yes. If you have problems and you cannot meet up with an appointment with your client, please make another arrangement quickly to fill in that gap. Do not let or leave your clients hanging. That would not send a right signal or a right message to your client. It will make the client feel like you don't really regard that client, and the client would also feel like probably his or her problem is too much and you're trying to avoid him or her. And lots more, a lot of things will come across the client's mind. So whenever you're having challenge and you cannot meet up with an appointment, please quickly make an alternative arrangement for that client to be attended to. Now, lastly, termination. It is said that anything that has a beginning must definitely have an end. So at some point, you should be able to terminate your professional relationship with your clients. So if you feel that, okay, the client has been assisted and the client can now do well on his or her own, then that services must be terminated. That professional relationship has to be terminated. Although you can do what we refer to as follow-up services, but then it must come to a point where you terminate your engagement with your clients. So I've taken time to explain most of all this, and you have it on your, how is it called, your material. So please do well to look for time to go through all of this. But before we proceed, I would like us to ask questions. I think we'll now be looking at ethical responsibilities to colleagues. Please ask questions. If you have any question, feel free to ask.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah, my name is Homer Michael.
Okay.
Yeah, My question is about informed consent. So I want to know at which point should we obtain consent from a client? For example, like assuming a social worker that is working with a patient, that is attending to a patient in the hospital. So I don't know, how will the social worker obtain an audio or written consent from the client, and at which point should the social worker, get the consent of a client? That's my question.
Okay. Okay. A client comes to you. Let's assume you're in a medical field. A client has a particular issue, and you have some suggestions, because by right you're not supposed to. Please, Ngozi and Anthony, don't worry, I've seen your hands. Just keep them. I will call you, right? Now, your client comes to you for help, and you have multiple suggestions for your client to choose one. And you've exposed to your client the advantages and disadvantages of these various options, right? And your client is settling for a particular one. Before you go ahead to render that service or to expose your client to the choice he or she is comfortable with, please provide your client with a form to feel that, yes, at some point, a social worker exposed to me various options. And from the explanation so far, I was comfortable with option B. And I am by this settling for option B. And I'm taking full responsibility for anything or for the circumstances that comes with this option. I hope that addresses your question. It is just like it is just like a patient who wants to be taken to the theater. Doctors do give them forms to fill before operation, right? The person will sign, and the patient's relative would sign as witness too. And then the doctors sign and keep it in their folder. I don't know if you get the point. Let me also give us this example to drive home that point. Let's say there are some persons who will not take blood transfusion in hospital, right? And then the social worker, while working with the clients and serving as a mediator between the client and the doctors, the client doctors, the social worker now talk to the doctors to see how they can explore other available options that will be comfortable, but that the client will be comfortable with, right? Now, the social worker now communicates those other options to the client. Now, on your part, you're supposed to provide the client with a document or a paper, a form to feel that, yes, you as a social worker did not force her, did not force him to settle for the option available. All you did was just to expose her to other options and let her decide if those options will be comfortable, will go well with her or not. So that will now be saving you from litigation. So that tomorrow the client will not come back and say, it was this social worker that forced me to do this. I believe these examples address your question. Let us now call on Ngozi George. Ngozi George, please speak.
Yeah, good morning all.
Good morning.
I so much appreciate the lectures this morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, in fact, it really shows that a social worker needs to be very smart to be able to fit in very well and not to be erupt into a problem. And I'm asking, like in a situation whereby urgency is needed in an action and no time to start getting a written consent, maybe from the client, I think other options like video or recorded voice can also serve as alternative. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, it is possible. But, you know, we need to be smart in whatever we are doing. The bottom line is, we don't want a situation where tomorrow it will now be like you're leaving a gap. It will now be like there's a gap where your clients can now use to make a case against you, right? So there's what we refer to as clientele system, right? So you don't work with the client alone. Let's say you're working with this man. Your client is a man, a married man with children. Oftentimes the children are of age. Probably they're even older than they are up to 18 or even above. This client is married. This client has relatives that do come around. That's the client support system. They can come up with the documents. Because if you say you're making a video, what happens behind the video? The client can still say he or she was subjected to duress, was forced to do those things. So even with the video, let it not just be you and the client though. The client's relatives, probably his wife, the children that are above 18 years old must be parts of whatever you're doing. No matter the shape it will take, be it voice notes, be it how is it called? And another thing you should also understand or take into consideration is the fact that technology has taken a different shape. These things can be manipulated, right? So do not engage in practice that you feel, okay, fine, you're smart, and you're still leaving a gap for a case to be made against you. For example, I can comfortably generate an AI video and even AI voice note. So it becomes questionable when you're making a video with just your client, with no other person, but just you and your client, and maybe with other social workers. It will be like a gang up against that client. Mind you, the client is in a position where it's considered that the client is not even strong enough to make decisions for himself, and you're just with that client. So what can you say later to convince someone that you never manipulated that client to settle for that choice? So it will be difficult to make a case, right? So why I'm not totally ruling out the option of making a video, but you should ensure that the client's relatives are also part of the video. Is that clear? Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, Anthony Mweze.
Okay, thank you very much for today's lecture. My question is related to ethical responsibility to professional colleagues and confidentiality, not only to professional colleagues, also to organization. And I will cite an example, and I will want you to really do more enlightenment on when it comes to burnout or compassion fatigue, like you said. At what point, I know that maybe in a social work setting, one might be, a supervisor might allocate some cases to people, but at what point can colleagues discuss sensitive issues about clients? what is the thin line between confidentiality and maintaining that social worker dealing with a case versus when the case needs support and you need to do case conferences? At what point can you freely discuss issues concerning a client? That is one. The B part of my question is, at what point a client needs a support? For example, a child in an organization needs a scholarship, and the other donor of scholarship or those who want to give scholarship are requesting for sensitive information about that child. Now, this is benefit to that child. And as a social worker, part of the ethical consideration is confidentiality and maintaining information. How do you strike a balance while ensuring the child access the benefit and without sending out very vital information about that child? These are my A and B questions. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you for those brilliant questions. You see, it's not like there's any hard and fast rule to when a social worker is expected to communicate to his or her colleague about his or her client situation. Now, there are two major reasons why a client will want to communicate or share. There are two major reasons why a social worker will want to share his or her client's private or confidential information with a colleague. One, that client's experience is similar to what your colleague's client is experiencing. Or maybe your client had worked with a particular, sorry, your colleague had worked with a particular client with a similar experience. And you want your client to share those experiences with you on how he or she managed that situation, right? Another reason it could be you deliberately telling your clients that, deliberately telling your colleagues that this my client situation is taking a toll on me. Please, how can I or assist me to render services to these clients? Another option or another reason could be that you're trying to establish, like you said, case conferencing, trying to identify support groups. Because in social work, there's what we refer to as group therapy. Sometimes, while working with your clients at that individual level, that micro level, there is need for your client to be connected with other persons who are experiencing similar situations, for them to come together, relate their experiences, help themselves to see how they can come back to their mainstream of social function. And this can only be achieved by talking to your colleagues to help them know, okay, fine, I have these clients with so and so challenge. Your colleague will tell you, okay, fine, I have a client with similar situation. You connect them. Or I know of a social worker whose client is experiencing the same challenge. You connect them. Or I used to have a client that passed through this phase and the client is doing well. You get the point. So the bottom line or the reason, the purpose for such exposure is still for the benefit of the clients. So it depends on your relationship or the services you're rendering to your clients and what you as a social worker seeks to achieve. You're working with these clients. Let's use HIV, for example. you're working with this client that is HIV positive, and you notice that the client knows his or her status, but then the clients find it difficult to go to the hospital to take his or her antiretroviral drugs. Now, these medications are free, but then going there to get it is a problem. Two things are involved. It's either the client is trying to hide or is scared of being stigmatized. The client does not want people to know that, okay, Yusuf, if you get HIV, and the clients find it difficult to go to the health care facility to get these drugs. Secondly, the client might lack the financial, will I say, the ability to pay his or her way to the healthcare facility. Probably it will cost him or her 10,000 naira to pay her way to and fro. So you now identify the fact that, okay, fine, the client's challenge is that he does not have money. Now, there will be need for a kind of case conferencing to connect these clients to other, or they connect the client situation, or maybe contact other social workers who can be of assistance while you're working with HIV infected clients. There are other social workers that are interested in helping vulnerable populations to get at least a handwork. So you will now be looking at, okay, fine, I have these clients, although the mandate of my organization is just to ensure that HIV clients get their antiretroviral drugs. And in this case, my client is poor. She cannot pay her way to the healthcare facility. Okay, fine. Let me do a case conferencing to link my client to another social worker whose mandate is to equip poor people, poor and vulnerable population with little income to start up a business, probably to start up a akara business, to fry akara, or maybe to sew. Maybe they just what they need to do is just to get you a shop, pay the first rent, and maybe get you 1 or 2 machines. I now link my client to this social worker. I say, so I have this client who she's HIV patient positive, and she could not even access healthcare facility for her medication. And these are the reasons. The reason is because she is poor, not because she's afraid of stigmatization. She's poor. So I think, and she knows how to fry akara very well. I think if we can get her money to start up that business, she will do well. She wouldn't look for money to pay her way to the hospital. You've succeeded in linking these clients, and there is no way you will link the clients to another social worker or another agency without at least justifying the fact that this your client falls within the category of people that are expected to be beneficiaries of the services rendered by this agency or by this social worker. So by so doing, directly or indirectly, you see yourself talking to this agency or this social worker, telling your colleague about your client situation, exposing those private and confidential information. I hope this addresses your question, right?
Yeah, thank you. I can see a lot of hands, but the B part, but it's fine. It's fine. The B part of it.
The B part is about what? So please remind me.
The B part is about organizations or social workers working with childcare organization. And on the other part, the child needs to access some services and some benefit. And they are requesting for sensitive information about that child. How do you maintain? How do you get the services for the child and still maintain high
the thing is, like we said earlier, the thing is, even when people need services or need to be helped, they need to be assisted in a way they are comfortable with. The truth of the matter is, any agency or organization, that is why we say social work is still growing in Nigeria. An organization that is asking for sensitive information about the child before rendering services to the child, I think those information they are asking about the child is that which will justify that this child happens to fall within the category of children that should qualify or that to get services from their agency. Now, the truth of it is and run by social workers or the social or those private information to the social workers in those agencies. So whichever way, they're in a better position to reveal it.
I don't know if it is my network. I can't hear a lecturer anymore.
Because they know, you know, as a sort of confidentiality that guides you, also expose those information. It's also under obligation to uphold the principle of confidentiality.
We stopped hearing you for a while, though. We just started hearing you now.
Hello. Is it just
Hi.
We
stopped hearing you for a while, so you started again.
Okay. Yes. Sorry about that. So I was saying that I think the person that asked this question is still here. Anthony, right?
Yes, I'm with you, sir.
Okay. Now, the point is, I was saying that by rights, that organization that is asking for the private information of children you're working with, that organization is expected by right to be run and managed by social workers. Now, what you're expected to do is to liaise with social workers from those organizations and expose those private information they are asking to the social workers in those organizations. Whatever they feel like doing with the information, they are at liberty to do with it, to do anything with the information. Because one, you are a social worker and you know that one of the responsibility you have to your colleague is to maybe expose some of this confidential information for the purpose of rendering services to a client. So now the same principle of confidentiality that guides you as a social worker, it's also applicable to your colleague who is also a social worker. So if that your colleague at the other end decides to leak those private information, you who gave out that information will not be held responsible. But the other social worker that did will be held responsible. I don't know if that is clear.
Thank you.
All right, I can see the hand of Mercy Praise.
Thank you so much for today's lecture. It's very, very good, very excellent. In fact, since I joined these classes, I have been really happy the way the lectures are meant to educate us. Today's own is highly sensitive. So my question really is, in dealing with, I work in an institution whereby a university. So then I'm a faculty officer and student presents, especially the vulnerable ones, they present with a lot of issues. And at the same time, they do not even want to open up as to real reason why they are asking you to activate a particular system to support them. Let me give an instance. Somebody had mental health issue, but because of stigmatization around mental health, and these students had been away from school, and now, like after 2 semesters, 3 semesters, 4 semesters, even at times 6 semesters, this person wants to come back. And you are trying to understand why this person stays so long away. And then you are now asking them if they even make an attempt to review, and you say, go get medical reports to document the medical transcripts, to document the years of that treatment, and that you are okay now to return to school. So now my question is, you know that this student need this support, and you know that it is in your position to activate already a university system that can help this student, and you know there is an information gap. Why I have a problem, because I'm a lawyer and I studied, my specialization is human rights, gender issues, and things like that. At times, I don't push too much. But in my heart, I see a student who had opportunity to finish school and move on with life and do other things, slip through the crack. Please, what should I do in where this information is not me now, is not the case, I can't keep it secret, but where this information is not coming to support for the help that this student is looking for. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, let me get you clearly. Now, the challenge is with the students not opening up, right?
Yeah, haphazardly. They may not tell you the real thing. Yes.
The thing is, you know, when it comes to, there are rules of engagement. And that is why I keep telling my students, as a social worker, you must know your onions. It's just like a parent who allows his or her toddler to detect for him or her. That parent has failed. You should know your child more than your child knows you, because you're the one training your child and not the other way around. Right? So if a child is trying to play a smart one, you should know. I don't know if you understand. You should know. And there are modalities in place. If there's what we refer to as social investigation. A client comes to you and is telling you, I have a challenge. Sometimes some of these students, let me use the example now. Some of these students come to you and they tell you they have a particular problem. In fact, let me use this example, my experience with the students, because I'm also in a school setting, right? I'm a level advisor. And there was a day I had meetings with my students, and I told them, I said, please, if you know you've not paid your school fees, because it was actually close time for exams, if you know you've not paid your school fees, private. So immediately after that, a student private chatted, and I told the student, okay, let's meet in school tomorrow. The student came, and one of the things I was trying to understand is not just to, because they are trying to process the information like, this man is saying that if you've not paid your fees, identify. It's like they have money there to pay our fees. The fact that you have somewhere to rely on to assist a student or a client does not mean you will do that in a way that is not professional. If not, that process will be abused. And you would even be exposing yourself to litigation, making it look like you just took advantage of the opportunity to help a relative, a friend who is not even qualified, who does not fall within the category of beneficiaries. So you need to be scientific and professional. Now, when I was engaging the student, one of the things I try to understand is the fact that, some students now, their parents give them money and they would use it to spend with girls, maybe do one or two things, and even some of them use it to gamble. So I put it to the clients or that student that I hope you've not received this money from your parents. I hope this money we are talking about, your parents are not so poor to the point of not being able to pay your fees. Okay, please, this is what we'll do. I've heard your complaints, but next week, give me your address and the phone number of your parents. I'm coming home to do some interview with your parents. Do you know that before the appointed dates, the following week, that student came with the school fees? Now, the most important thing is that problem, the issue of school fees, had been resolved. There was no need to push for that. The only thing I did was I called him. I said, it's not just about the school fees. Are you sure that next school fees, are you sure of being able to pay the next school fees? If not, I still what I wanted to do. He said, no problem, that next school fees will take care of himself, that he can pay. Now, it is possible that this student had collected monies from the parents.
Okay.
You get the point? It's possible. But if you're out of emotions and you now say, oh, this student, next week is exam, let's do something, you'll be helping the wrong person.
That's true. Yeah.
So while we are trying to address the problem, please, we should not be helping people who will not appreciate that help. People who will not understand the need or feel the impact.
Yes. Yes.
In fact, there is what we refer to as mistaken mercy.
Yes. Yes. That's true.
So if you render service or mercy to people that are not deserving of that mercy will not make sense. And even in God's eyes, it is not mercy. You've been duped.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So now, when you're faced with situations like this, like I said, please, wherever you find yourself, practice social work. This idea you're coming with is a beautiful one. If you can set up a structure in that institution to cater for indigent patients, in fact, with the school loan by the President Tinubu's administration, you can set up this. And when students come to apply for this school loan, all you need to do from your angle is to carry out social investigation. This student comes, fills a form, say that, okay, fine, they need a school loan. They fill this form. Beautiful. Use the information provided on the forms to do a social investigation. Most of them are in school. They don't even know you're in their houses, their villages. Investigating them to see if they actually qualify to access this fund. If not, they should give way for people who actually qualify, those who are actually poor. Most of them you see filling those forms are people that has received money even from their uncles, their parents to pay their fees, but they still have additional money. So if you come up with something like this, also make sure you have other social workers that would assist in doing some kind of a social investigation, not just people coming to present their issue and lying to you, and you take the information on face value and you want to act on it. No, you'll be making a serious mistakes. Like this one you're talking about, the heart mental issue, you still need to go further. It's by virtue of your social investigation that you will now understand that this client is presenting a different case entirely. And the situation will now be like a client who has, will I say, malaria, and is coming to tell you it's just headache. You will treat the headache, and the headache will not go, because the headache is caused by the malaria. I hope that addresses your question.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Why I was insistent on information is because when a system is activated, it goes through medical center, then it goes to academic affairs, and those information must be divulged. That's why I normally add.
Okay, so you mean, as it is now, you mean that in the process of assessing this information or assessing this fund, those informations will be
it will go like like the case of the mental health. That medical report that I was demanding from, when it comes, it goes direct to our medical center. Our medical center will set a board that will evaluate these particular students, and their report will now go to academic affairs, who will now reinstate these students. That's why
the point is, sorry for cutting you short. At least I think I get your point finally. The thing is, when you are activating such a system, it must be independent. I don't know if you understand.
Okay.
Hello,
I'm listening.
I said, if you are activating such, will I say, such a system within a system, it must be independent. How do I mean? How do I mean? Now, this system must not, is not every time you're looking for assistance for maybe to assist a particular student that you'll be running through this whole process. In fact, that long process most times is even frustrating in itself. So now there should be a, will I say, a bank, a pool of cash somewhere, or some persons. And another thing is, sometimes when you say you're activating such a system, you must not depend on the system itself, the institution.
Okay.
There are within the environment of that institution, there are people, there are organizations that can still help.
Okay.
And another thing again is, I used to tell people from the beginning of your engagement, or when you're about activating a system, that is where you have opportunity of completing and sealing everything you're supposed to do. For example, do not start up a system where you will begin to give answers to people. The structure should be open for audit from time to time. Whoever wants to audit whatever you're doing should come. But don't leave it open as if whenever you need assistance, you are at the mercy of people to provide information. Okay. You will fail in service. I don't know if you get the point. It's just like, okay, let me tell us, let me use this example. You're working in a community, and in this community, you just have engagement with this community, and you want to assist vulnerable and the poor in this community. The first thing you need to do is to do what we refer to as community mapping. Now, in the course of this mapping, you do what we refer to as asset mapping. Now, you're identifying resource persons in the community. By resource persons, maybe medical doctors, maybe nurses, and philanthropists, politicians, people you can easily run to. Now, you're identifying these people, keeping their information, creating a database for them. And while identifying them, you meet them to tell them, oh, I am a social worker. I am working in your community, and these are the services I tend to render. So from time to time, you might be called upon to do one or two. Whatever you do is still for your community. It's not going outside. So by the time, maybe after 1 or 2 months or 3 months or even 1 year, you now decide to call a particular community member who is a resource person on your list. You just tell the person, okay, fine, there is this person, there is this member of your community that is about to drop out of school because of school fees. And he needs a scholarship to complete. He's very intelligent though. In fact, as we speak, his CGPA stands at this. You must not give details of the person like the name, his problem, and the rest. I don't know if that is clear.
It is, I understand. Thank you so much. Thank you. Your explanation is very, very key. Thank you.
Enes.
Sir.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Just to add to what you've been saying, and I really, really enjoy all the points you've been saying here. I want to contribute a bit on confidentiality from my own practice here.
Okay.
Confidentiality is the base of our practice here, where I am. That is why before I leave to any maybe meeting, going to a client's house, in my work vehicle, I've got consent form and referral form. Once I'm doing the assessment, the next thing that happens is for the client to sign the consent form. With this consent form, I can speak to any other allied health worker or any professional because I've gotten the consent now. So that is where the confidentiality, it comes in a form of you only divulge a client's information to people that are linked to what you want them to assist you with. So we regard it as a very high policy practice here, especially in child protection where I work. the child information is secured, and where the child cannot make an informed decision, an elder, the parents. But sometimes here where I am, we've got problem of mental health, drug. Look, it's an epidemic here. That is why we can't get enough social workers to work here. It's a big epidemic. And the person we might be working with may not have the capacity to make an informed decision. We rely on maybe relatives, parents, uncle and sisters. So on the issue of confidentiality, sometimes there's a dilemma here for us to work through, but we still maintain the confidentiality. Meanwhile, I just want to say thank you for all your contributions. They are really spot on. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. We appreciate those your insightful comments and kind words too. So that's okay. I can see the hand of Faith Adam. Please say something.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for this lecture. Sir, my question is based on this confidentiality and privacy. What should a social worker do if a client shared an information about illegal activities with him?
I didn't get that. What should a social worker do if a client should share
information about illegal activities?
Okay. Yeah. Like we said earlier, see, like we said earlier, you have, as a worker, you have an ethical responsibility to the laws of the land. Now, if you are aware of an illegal practice of your client, and your client, now maybe your client, after doing one or two, committing a crime, the client now comes to you to tell you, and you now keep that information, my dear, you might be liable to what we refer to as, to the lawyers here, you agree with me, what we refer to as an accomplice to the crime, because you are aware and you happen to keep quiet. Now, we have a lot of responsibility to play in courts. So if a client talks to you, it's like making a confessional statement to you. First, you must be sure that what he or she is telling you actually happened the way it happened.
Okay.
And please, you can tell the client to report his or herself to a law enforcement agency, because there are no time expiry date for criminal matters. So even if it is 10 years or 20 years, they might still come for that person. And even in the course of investigation, if it's evident that you are aware at some point and you still kept quiet, you'll be dragged in. I don't know if you get the point.
Yes, sir.
So that is why I keep telling, I will repeat this. A social worker should know his or her onions. Now, to avoid making it look like, okay, if your client has opened up to you and you're now setting the client up, you need a lot of work to do. That is why communication is key in social work practice. You must make sure for that client to open up to you. It means the client feels bad about what he or she has done. And you tell them it is good for this matter to be cleared up. Let me use an example. As we speak, the environment is our laboratory, and all the experiences we have in day-to-day engagement is part of social work practice. As we speak, I have a client in Mbina. Now, this is what happened. He killed someone. But he ran. In this case, he did not tell me. It was later, after he was arrested, that's when he now made that confessional statement that yes, he did it. Now, what we are trying to do at this end is to work with the family, because once the family said, okay, fine, this matter don't happen now, make we forget. Once the family dropped it, he will be acquitted. So now we are trying to work with the family, because the boy is a very young boy. We are trying to work with the family and also with the court to say, please, oh, this guy did this. The circumstances at which he did this, I think he's not feeling regret, and he's now making a confessional statement. So can we, through the lenses of the law, try to see if we can use the punishment, or if possible, acquit this young man? Okay, he was able to do this in the course of his, will I say, before he got into this act, he was a teacher, and he succeeded in helping so and so number of persons without collecting money. Please, can we allow him to go back to continue with his humanitarian services? So what I'm trying to say is, a client that opens up to you, please do not throw that client under the bus. That's why he's opening up to you. And do not keep the information, because it will make you an accomplice to that. Now, work with that client. Advise and encourage the client to the nearby law enforcement agency to document the crime. Report it. And if possible, take the matter to court and begin to plead. It will be soft. It will be better than just leaving it like that. But the most important thing is, please, try to, we, in this part of the world, most of us will just have this criminal mindset. Some of them will just feel bad that if I be now, I will tell the social. Please, if a client should tell you any of these things, it's even making your work more difficult. It's a way of telling you how you have more. So you have to sit up. First, work on the client's mentality. Understand that whatever action you're taking is a process of helping him or her. That first, he might be arrested and he might end up in jail. But the thing is, you work with all the law enforcement agency and the court to make sure the punishment will not be that severe and it will come out as soon as possible. But let him know that he might not go scot-free. Right? And please don't keep it. That's what I will not advise. Don't keep it. In fact, even when a client is yet to commit a wrong, for example, a client says, in my street, there's this guy in my trouble. It's like, I go and buy a gun and keep it. Please, from that moment, work with that client. Talk to the client. And you feel that the client is still adamant, report to the nearby law enforcement agency. But because you see that same client will now tell you, this woman has been disturbing me for a very long time. I even complained to my social worker that I was going to buy a gun, and my social worker did not say anything. So even when the client is threatening to harm others and you are aware, please talk to the client, work on the client, and tell the client to report to a nearby law enforcement agency. If not, do that yourself. That is you being, will I say, obedient to constitutional authorities, and you the responsibility as a social worker to the laws of the land. I hope that addresses your question.
Thank you so much. Yes.
All right. So we'll be looking at ethical responsibilities to colleagues. One of the things a social worker is expected to do is to respect the colleague. Please, even though you've been in practice for a very long time, and you have this junior colleague in your agency, please accord everyone respect. Respect your colleague. It's a responsibility. So if you practice in a way that is disrespectful to your colleague, it would expose you to litigations. Now, interdisciplinary collaboration. We have a lot to, in fact, social work is very important. If you really want to appreciate this, ask some of your colleagues who are outside the shores of Nigeria, then you appreciate the value of social work. If you were to be in Nigeria now, social workers would have been saying that, we are the most important and valued profession, and as such, we don't have regard for other professionals. No. So the fact that we are valued, we are useful, we are known, it's not enough for us to disrespect others, because we would also need their services. We cannot help people in isolation. So sometimes people have problems, but they don't know who and where to go for solution. But we as social workers, we know where to link them to, or who to connect them with. We serve as broker, linkage, and the rest. So how can we link our clients to other professionals or other colleagues from other professions when we do not collaborate with them? So you must have this ability to collaborate. And I used to tell people, they say charity begins at home. If you want to succeed in most of these things, how do you treat those around you? You want to achieve a particular success in a particular task. How do you connect with others to assist you in achieving success in your endeavor? All these are questions you need to ask yourself before you now begin to address the big question, which has to do with respect for your colleagues. The third point is disputes involving colleagues. Yes. It's not possible for two people to be working together without conflicts. It is not possible. In fact, I even tell people that sometimes conflicts brings out the
This is
best.
the second point, not the third point. Or maybe I didn't get the second point.
The second point is collaboration. First is respect. Second is collaboration. Interdisciplinary. Okay. Why the third point is dispute involving colleagues, right? So you see that there's no way two persons or three persons can exist without conflict. Even sometimes you yourself as an individual used to have conflict with yourself, not to talk of when two or more persons are involved. So you must handle conflict involving colleagues with professionalism. Sometimes it might involve you, sometimes it might involve other colleagues. Do you go to the extent of escalating just because you take pleasure in bad news? Please, we want to avoid such, or being caught in the web of such a wrong practice or character, right? You must be person of character. You must be known to be person of character. Now, the fourth point is incompetence and impairment of colleagues. Incompetence and impairments of colleagues. So when social workers who have direct knowledge about colleagues' incompetence or impairment as a result of mental health difficulties, personal problems, substance use, and lots more. The truth of it is we all have our past. The fact that you're a social worker does not mean you are not once a drug addict or a substance user. In fact, I even tell people that our situations even make us better. A social worker that was once into drugs will be in a better position to help drug abusers or users today. If you look at people that are at the forefront in fighting against drug abuse and substance use, are persons who have once abused this substance. And you see them, how they are pushing because of their experiences. And for those of us who are Christians here, you remember Apostle Paul now? You can imagine Apostle Paul even was able to do more than other apostles. And this is because he was once a persecutor. So from his past experience, when he had the opportunity of doing better, he even did better than others. So do not judge your colleagues because of their past. So if you should have this information, you must consult with that colleague and extend assistance and not to castigate them. It is true that sometimes a person that has been depressed or has been into substance use might want to slide back. And if you notice, you have a responsibility of approaching this person and helping the person to call back and not to proceed in such action. When a social worker is of the opinion that the incompetence of a colleague is not in the best interest of the profession, the worker has the responsibility to discuss the matter with the colleague to seek for remedy. So you notice your colleague is beginning to misbehave. You have the responsibility of approaching that colleague and resolving that issue without necessarily castigating it. If not, if you raise doors unnecessarily, you would make the working environment uncomfortable, and even your colleagues, your clients who come for assistance, once they hear all this information or all this shouting and quarreling, it would make them not to trust the profession any longer. In fact, it will now be like this scenario or this situation that happened to one of our clients. A client said that she used to have issues with her husband. And one of these days, she went to her pastor to report the husband. Upon reaching there, she noticed that her pastor and the wife were having a very serious problem. In fact, they were fighting. And the pastor had happened to slap the wife. And that day was to be, I think, their midweek worship, whatever. So she immediately went back home and said, okay, today she will go for evening service to see if the pastor will still come and preside over the program. And to her greatest dismay, the pastor came and preached. This is someone that slapped his wife. So the point is, we are all going through a lot. Our client comes to us for assistance and meet us fighting, will not trust us. It will be like that woman that tried to approach the pastor for assistance only to meet the pastor fighting and went back home. So if your client come and see you fighting with your colleagues or having issues with your colleagues, it will become difficult for you to assist that client or for that client to trust you. So if such misunderstanding arises, or you understand or you figure out that your colleague is beginning to practice in a way that will not be of in the best interest of the client, you discuss that with your colleague immediately and see how those issues can be addressed. Right. In fact, following the doctrine of ripeness, if you're reporting such matter to your superior, the question will now be, at your level, at that level, what did you do? So before even escalating to your superior, you must make sure you succeed in doing something at your level, which include trying to address it with that particular colleague. If it's not yielding results, positive results, you cannot escalate it to your superior to see how they can address it permanently. We will now be looking at unethical behavior of colleagues. That's another responsibility, unethical behavior of colleagues. So when social workers who believe that their colleagues have acted unethically, they should volunteer to discuss their concerns with such colleagues. So if you notice that a particular colleague has engaged in an unethical or acted unethically, please discuss that sincerely with the colleague. And when social workers find that the colleagues are unjustly charged with unethical behavior, the professional must assist such colleagues by defending them. You find yourself in an organization and you notice that your colleague, probably because your boss is trying to pick on your colleague and your colleague is unethically charged or unjustly charged just to be punished, you need to stand by your colleague. You need to fight for your colleague. So this goes a long way to help us understand that we must watch our backs, right? To ensure that we support ourselves. Now, referral for services and consultation. That's another responsibility. When social workers feel that their intervention in helping process is not yielding results, they must consider referring the client to another professional. You know, we oftentimes make these mistakes, saying that or concluding that our clients are proving adamant, our clients are not responding to help. Please, if you're working with a client and you notice that your client is not improving, do not blame your clients. Blame yourself. And that blame, you're blaming yourself, would motivate you to improve in your service delivery. Now, we in social work practice, we don't blame our clients when our clients are not making improvement. We blame ourselves, or we try to ask ourselves by engaging in reflective practice that what am I not doing to assist this client? So it is possible your approach, it is possible the method, the model, the theory you're using is not working on that client. Or it's possible your agency cannot even address that issue. So it is better for you to refer these clients to other professionals who are known or who are specialized in the area of your client's problem. So do not insist that you must assist a particular client. Do not insist that, or do not use a client's problem to as a yardstick, as a measurement for your abilities. That's any client that comes to me, I make sure I resolve the problem. No. There are some clients' problem, there are clients whose problem falls outside the boundaries of your mandate or your agency mandate. So a client that comes to you with issues of, will I say, wife battery, intimate partner violence, and you notice that this client is engaging in intimate partner violence because of his or her mental health issue. So you cannot address the mental health issue because your agency is about intimate partner violence. So all you need to do is you will not say I'm a social worker. You want to insist when you're not specialized in mental health related issues. All you need to do is to refer to another social worker or agency that are specialized, that have specialized knowledge and competence to handle such case, right? The next point is sexual harassment. Sexual harassment. So social workers, practitioners who engage in supervising students, like we said earlier, your clients comes to you, or we meet our clients at the point of need. They are vulnerable and can be easily taken advantage of. So one, avoid taking advantage of our client. And you also need to be careful as to how you exercise your professional authority, not to abuse power. In fact, social workers make responsible use of power. We are expected, in fact, what makes you a professional is your ability to make judicious use of power, responsible and professional use of authority, not in a way that will further expose your client to harm. Because you feel you have relative power over your client, you want to take advantage of your client by sexually harassing your client or using like what is common in the university environment, sex for marks. And because you know this client or this student will always fail, you want to say, okay, fine, for you to pass the course, you must. Last year, we heard of a situation where a student had to commit suicide because a particular lecturer kept failing her from year 1 to final year. So she felt like she was worthless, and she left a written note that the lecturer forced her to commit suicide. So we don't want that to happen with us, right? Social workers should avoid sexual relationship with colleagues. Social workers should avoid sexual relationship with clients. Social workers should avoid sexual, when we talk about these responsibilities sexually, it can also be extended to our colleagues, especially if this colleague is your superior, you're superior to this colleague, right? You want to use opportunity by saying that if you don't give heed to my or give consent to my request, I won't approve your leave. I won't approve I won't give you approval for conferences and the rest. So you can use that as a bait. You want to force your colleague to engage in sexual relationship with you, please. That is not the right thing. That should be discouraged. Okay? So let's see how we can quickly wrap up with ethical responsibilities in professional settings or professional practice. One of these professional practices in education environment, like in schools, education, consultation, and training. And when it has to do with performance, evaluation, and recommendation, as well as client transfer and record keeping. So only those social workers who have strictly undertaken studies of theories and practical courses in social work and have successfully completed BSW and MSc and other degree diplomas awarded by a recognized university. A recognized university which has the approval of university grants or university commission shall undertake professional practice of social work as teachers, consultants, and practitioners. So it is only when you are trained by an approved institution that you can take up the responsibility to even train others and even serve as a consultant, right? So you cannot claim to be a consultant or a teacher of social work when you've not been trained by a recognized and approved university or commission. Like in this case, in Nigeria, we have the University Commission that gives approval for universities to set up social work departments, and we also have an act that gave approval to Chartered Institute of Social Work to train professionals. So it is unless you're trained by this recognized body that you can take up consultation services. But then at this level, without your BSc, MSc, or degrees in social work, it becomes difficult for you to carry out consultation services. But although you can practice social work, you can be a social worker, but when it comes to consultation services, you need further training. And that's why I keep telling us that in social work practice, you need to be exposed to constant training, constant research. That's how you build competence, right? Now, the next point is performance evaluation and recommendation. Social workers who are involved in evaluating the performance of other colleagues of the fraternity, such as adjudication of dissertation of MPhil, PhD, and evaluation of performance, as well as publication for profession, should do this in a responsible and fair manner. So you have the responsibility. If you're opportune to serve at this level, you're expected to be professional, not to take money for the purpose of certifying others that are under you, or because you want to sustain a relationship, you're not doing the right thing. It would be like taking monies from a medical student that is not properly trained, and you're certifying that medical student and still saying, okay, this student can carry out operation. And yet when it's time for this student to operate your child or yourself or even your wife, you will say no, because you know that this student was not properly trained. So that shouldn't be said of social workers. Social workers who have the responsibility of selecting candidates for various programs of studies in social work must strictly follow stated criteria, right? Without any cause to try to favor anybody, right? And finally, for today, we'll be looking at transfer and record keeping. So when new clients is referred or approaches a social worker, the social worker should discuss with the client whether consultation with previous service provider, colleague, or agencies will be in the best interest of the client. So while the social worker is accepting transfer of client, the social worker must ensure that all necessary information pertaining to the client are shared to that community so that continuity can take place. I think this to address the question asked by I think someone among us here that asked the question if it is appropriate to reveal confidential information of a child to another agency who is seeking for some confidential private information of those children. Yes, that agency are also binded by the principle of confidentiality. So whatever information you're giving them, it's expected that they treat it as confidential as it is. If they happen to expose such information, you can even use it to make a case against them for their license to be withdrawn, for them to stop practicing. So they would not even want to expose those information. So do not be scared of revealing or even referring such clients. If a client, whatever we are doing should be for the best interest for our clients. So if you're referring a client to another agency or another social worker, please make sure you transfer all the necessary information pertaining to that client so that continuity of service will be smooth and beneficial to the client. So social workers should ensure that only those information that are directly relevant to the delivery of services are shared to the client or to the other agency for continuity purpose, right? So when we meet next week, we'll be talking about the ethical responsibilities to the profession. Ethical responsibilities to the profession. Any question? Please, I hope I can be heard clearly. If there's any question, feel free to ask. All right, I have some messages.
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, Scholar Bolum said, I want to say something. Please, you can say. I think Mercy Praise asked a question.
Sir, I'm
Yes.
Scholastic Abulu. When you were talking about confidentiality, you were talking about it when you came to the class and you told them that those that have not paid their school fees should identify themselves. Then you now said that one of the students chatted you up and came to you and told you that he has not paid the school fees. And you now said that before you can do it, that you have to call the parents to know where he lives and others. That the following week, he now paid it. I wanted to say that the students may not want to expose the parents. There are some parents that cannot pay their children's school fees, but doesn't want them to be exposed. That was why the student now went to look for the money to pay. Because in our church, there was a time we were asked to give the poor anything we have that we should bring, even if it's clothes, food, anything we have at our disposal, we should bring so that the poor ones in the church can collect. We brought those things and nobody collected until after everybody left for church. After church was when they now came and collected. The next Sunday when we came, we now saw that they've already collected everything that was there. So it is possible that the student does not want to expose the parents. So it's not as if they've given him the money before and he or she has not paid. So that is what I wanted to say, sir.
Okay, you're right. It's possible. One good thing about social work is you can assume. You can always assume, but allow your assumptions to be subjected to test. So that's an assumption. But then I actually did something. Before asking to hear parents or to investigate down to that level, I asked, are your parents the one training you? He said, yes. Are you living with your parents? And he said, yes. Are you sure your parents can the course of, because he's a one student, and he said, yes. I said, okay. Are you sure this money was not given to you? He said, yes. Okay. How do you want me to be sure? He even said I can come around. That was my intention, but I needed him to feel free. I wanted him to be sure that he really wants me to come around. And mind you, when you're addressing issues of poverty, you address it from the root. Like I said earlier, you're a professional in practice. Your client should not detect for you. Even when your client is trying to hide something from you, and you know that aspect would enable you to address it from the root, please don't dance to the tune of your clients. Don't dance to the tune of your clients. Your clients don't want people to know that your parents are poor. You're not an ordinary person. You're a social worker. You should know. It's just like a patient goes to the hospital and says, I am a patient that is 30 years is saying she's 18 years because she's trying to hide her age. What are you doing?
Yourself.
You're doing yourself, not the doctor. And because now the doctor is seeing a 30-year-old lady in front of him and because the doctor, the client is saying she's 18 years, he will now be treating the client as 18 years. That will be gross incompetence on the side of the medical doctor, because you know. So because the client is not comfortable revealing her age does not mean the client should be allowed that way. No. And mind you, when he came with the money, because I asked, this one you're coming with this money, can you still pay the next one? And he said, yes. Are you sure you don't need assistance? I hope you get the point. So when you're faced with situations like this, don't assume. Don't assume. Please go to the roots and make sure you know, unless he is saying that he's not under his parents and hence it's a different ballgame. And mind you, addressing these issues properly would even enable you to address other issues. That might be having problems with managing money. And if you go to the house now, you will notice that probably he's doing other things. So the bottom line is, as a social worker, you should know your onions. Do not let your clients detect for you. Use your professional wisdom to identify what to do at a given time. Let your clients know that you're not ordinary person. You are just like the medical doctor will talk to that patient that if you're hiding your age to anybody, don't hide it to your medical doctor. Tell your client, I am a social worker. If you need assistance, tell me the truth. So you don't just keep quiet and say, okay, because maybe the client don't want to reveal the financial status of the family. That's why. No. There's no way you can assist such a client. Anthony Nweze said, please,
Yes,
sir, if wrong against the law is not putting anyone or life at risk, I suggest this should be managed by a social worker, because the information is divulged based on trust rather than handing over to law enforcement agencies. Thank you. Yeah, it's only when the situation puts the society at risk or individual at risk that engaging law enforcement is advised. You're right, Mr. Anthony. And if you listen to the question your colleague asked, he said, what if a client engages, as she puts it, right? Whichever way, if the client's action is not exposing the client to danger, and others around the client to danger, please, you can manage it. But if it's exposing others to danger, and even the client, even if it's exposing the client himself to danger, please don't keep it. It's not within your power or your jurisdiction to handle it. Refer the matter to a law enforcement agency. I hope that addresses the question too, or that concern. In the absence of any other question, please, you do well to take note of where we'll be starting from next week, ethical responsibilities as professional. And please, if possible,
there's a question in the chat box.
So you can read ahead of time so that you can ask questions when necessary.
There is a question in the chat box, sir.
There's a question in the chat box. Can we totally reject a case whereby we think we can cope with the clients? Can we totally reject? Can we totally reject a case whereby we think we can cope with the clients? Samuel Ajechimo, can you elaborate on your question? Please. Let's understand you better.
I mean, he said we can't cope. Cases that we can't cope with, can we reject? I think that's what.
He said, can we totally reject a case whereby we think we cannot cope with the client?
Okay, that's what you meant. Can we totally reject a case whereby we think we cannot cope with a client? Is that your question? Is that the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
yes,
okay. No. you cannot reject a client. One of the principles of social work is acceptance. And one of the core values of social work is to render services. So if you reject a client, you've not rendered services. You've not. You cannot be rendering services when you've rejected a client. First, you accept that client. And if you think that client's problem is outside the boundaries of your professional expertise, all you need to do is to refer that client to another social worker or another agency. Do not reject a client, please. Does that address your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Clear, sir. Clear, sir.
In most cases, it's right to inform the law enforcement, because if we cover the client, she might commit such crime again. Yes, still based on what Gigi Mo said earlier. Okay, sorry, what Anthony Mweze said earlier. If it's something you can manage, that will not pose a challenge. For example, a client that goes to steal yam from his neighbor's farm, you can manage that one. How many yams did you steal? I stole 5. I stole 5 yams. You can get that client 5 yams, and go with the client to that neighbor and plead that, please, oh, there was a time that your 5 yams missed. It was this my client that stole it. So he has come to plead and even to return. You get the point. So there are some you can manage. There are some manage. And mind you, like I said earlier, for some of us who are lawyers here, you understand how criminal offenses can be. You can, even the ones you feel you can manage, please manage it well. Manage it well. Don't manage it on your own. If you manage it on your own, it loss into your hands. Like one of these processes I'm taking now, or this one I just said now, it can still be manipulated. So if the person agrees, there should be a written document. There should be an evidence that, okay, fine, this man at some point, they identified who stole his yam, and the person came to plead for mercy, for forgiveness, and peace was made. Document it. Document. So that's part of how, as an individual, can manage most of these things without necessarily informing. Because do you know why we say this? Why I'm saying this is sometimes people, for example, now if my phone gets missing, even when I don't know who stole the phone, the first on the right thing to do is to go to any nearby police and make a case. Just record it and keep. Thinking, okay, it's not a problem. It's not a threat to the client, and it's not a threat to people's life around, and you feel you want to manage it. The person who suffered that wrong might have made a case, might have opened the case without you knowing. So it's it from the, social work, anything you're doing, please make sure you address problem cause from the root. So even if you say, okay, fine, I can handle this situation, please handle it, manage it professionally, not on your own. Maybe if you meet the person will not be telling you, thank God you came home. You went to police station to report this matter. Okay, and let's go to police and close the case. So you will not just conclude that after all, this thing is not positive. A danger to do around and the colleague. This client has changed. You've not helped that client. So that's how far we can. That's how far we can go. In most cases, it's right to inform the lawyer. Okay, fine. You're still saying the same thing. So that's how far we can go for today. When we meet next time, we start from where we stop. In the absence of any further question, we call it a day. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, sir. God bless you.
Thank you for excellent lecture.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. God bless. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. God bless you, sir.
Okay.